Hey everybody. So I went through the discussion boards for Chapter 5 and I noticed a couple consistent things, and I felt like it might be helpful for me to address them in a quick video. So I'm going to try and make this as quick as possible. So here we go. First, what is a stimulus and what is a response? A stimulus is something typically outside of the organism, okay? And it causes a response. A response doesn't cause a stimulus causes a response, all right? And a response is a behavior which can be either external or internal. So it can be external, so for example, your dog sitting or rolling over or something like that, or internal. So for example, for a person, an internal response can be feeling good or feeling mad or, feeling motivated, something like that, okay? So that's what a stimulus is, and that's what a response is. And again, I want to reiterate that a stimulus causes a response. A response does not cause a stimulus. All right? Now, let's talk about, really quickly, some specifics about each of the elements of the whole situation. Okay? First, let me describe an example that I'm going to be using throughout my discussion. It was one of the commercials given on the discussion board. It's a Coke commercial. It's a very common one these days. It's a commercial of the girl going to the same convenience store, purchasing Cokes with her friends' names on those bottles of Cokes. Her and her friends then go do something fun, and then it ends with her returning to the convenience store, purchasing a Coke with the cashier's name on it. The girl and the cashier leave the convenience store to be met with a celebration at the end of the commercial. Now, that is the general commercial. So let's first talk about an unconditioned stimulus. Okay. Again, a stimulus is something outside of the organism that causes the response. So an unconditioned stimulus. An unconditioned stimulus is something that doesn't need to be learned, either because it's a naturally occurring response or it was learned previously. Okay. So for example, humans just naturally are happy when other people are happy. When we see other people happy, we feel good. We may not necessarily be happy per se, but we feel good. Okay, that's a naturally occurring response. Um, Money, all right, makes us feel good, and so that can be then associated with other things later. But we had to learn to feel good in response to money. All right, originally it was just green paper. Okay, but getting stuff just naturally makes us feel good. So after repeatedly pairing money with getting stuff, okay, eventually money started making us feel good even when we don't get stuff. Okay, just getting money starts making us feel good. Then getting money becomes a unconditioned stimulus for to associate with other things later down the line. Okay, so an unconditioned stimulus is something that doesn't need to be learned because it was either a natural occurring, we naturally respond to that stimulus in a certain way, or we previously learned it at some point. Okay, now let's talk about, so in the Coke commercial, okay, that one that I described earlier, the unconditioned stimulus is seeing all the happy people. You see them going and hanging out. They look like they're having a good time. There's a celebration at the end. So all these happy people are our unconditioned stimulus because they naturally evoke a response. In this case, happiness. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about the response. Now again, a response is some reaction to the stimulus. An unconditioned response is a response to the unconditioned stimulus. The conditioned response is the same response. The response doesn't change. What changes is what caused it. Okay? So the unconditioned response is caused by the unconditioned stimulus. We feel good. So in the case of the Coke commercial, we feel good when we see happy people. So our unconditioned response, feeling good, occurs because we've seen the unconditioned stimulus, happy people. Okay? Now, the conditioned response is the same response. So the conditioned response is feeling good. But what changes is that the conditioned response is caused by the conditioned stimulus. Okay? So now let's talk about the conditioned stimulus and the neutral stimulus together. And we're going to talk about them together because they're the same thing. All right? The conditioned stimulus and the neutral stimulus are always the same stimulus. The only difference between them is that when the stimulus was neutral, it didn't cause the response. And when it becomes a conditioned stimulus, it starts to cause the conditioned response. Okay? So in the Coke commercial, the Coke brand, all right, is your neutral stimulus, because before you learned anything, before you ever encountered Coke, the Coke brand, it meant nothing to you. It was just a word with, in cursive on a white cursive on a red background. It meant nothing to you. Okay? So it caused no response. It didn't make you feel good. So originally, the Coke brand was a neutral stimulus. But the Coke company is hoping that if you watch this commercial enough, you will start to associate the Coke brand, which was previously a neutral stimulus, with the unconditioned stimulus, which is all the happy people. And hopefully for Coke company, eventually Coke by itself will start to make you feel good. Now, oftentimes when looking at a commercial, people assume that the response that the commercial is trying to condition is going and purchasing some product of the brand. But advertisements really can't condition a very complex behavior like getting up and going to purchase something. So instead, advertisements attempt to condition smaller responses that can then bias purchasing behavior. So, for example, let's say you are in the cashier lane at Walmart and you're thirsty. Okay, well, you look around and there's a cooler there, and it has all sorts of different soda brands. Well, if you have repeatedly watched this Coke commercial, then you will feel good when you see the Coke brand. So when you look among all the different brands of Coke in that cooler, when you see the Coke brand, the hope is that you will feel good, and so you will be slightly inclined to purchase the Coke rather than any of the other brands. Okay, so again, they're not trying to condition you to purchase the brand. They're trying to condition you to feel a certain response towards the brand that might bias your purchasing preference later on. Okay. The other thing that I want to mention is be very aware of who the target of conditioning is. Okay, so if it's a commercial, typically the target of conditioning is the viewer. It's no one in the commercial, it's the person watching the commercial. Okay, so again, in the Coke commercial, no one in the commercial is being conditioned. I mean, you could find a way to show that there's a conditioning going on for characters in the commercial. Certainly that's a possibility. But typically commercials are targeting the viewer. Okay, so then you need to choose one response in whoever the target is, just one. Okay, and then look at how what stimuli are being associated with one another to evoke the response. Okay, and in fact, when identifying examples, it's probably best to first identify your targeted conditioning and what response in that target is being uh, evoked. Okay, and what it is being conditioned to be evoked by. Okay. All right. So that's all I had. A little over 10 minutes. I hope that doesn't take too much of your time. But I also hope that it's helpful. And if you have any questions, please, 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 as always, be sure to shoot them my way. All right, guys. Have a good week. Good luck on that writing assignment.